Welcome, my darlings, to my humble chateau. Please make yourself very comfortable. Relax your mind and release your imagination to me. I will bring you a story to entrance and entertain. Perhaps a frightening one. Perhaps a steampunk. Perhaps a bit of mythology. Anyway, sit back, enjoy, and subscribe to me. Jezabel Fallen by Josphine Black. When I turned 18, my parents cast me out of the flat we lived in. "We can barely afford to feed and take care of each other," my father had told me. "You'll find work soon enough." But we lived in the poor section of town, in the slums really. A young single woman did not fare well in this part of town, but I was left with no other choices. I had no money to travel to another town, and even if I did, I had no idea what would be a better place to try. For the first couple of days, I barely slept, taking refuge in alleyway doors where I hoped to be out of sight. Sleeping so unprotected was nerve-wracking. Every little sound woke me at once, until I found myself in near constant state of hypervigilance. As soon as dawn hit, I'd walk the streets to look for some work that I could do, anything to keep myself fed. I thought I'd known hunger before when I was living at home. I was wrong. On the fourth day, when my stomach was eating my spine, I was so lightheaded I feared passing out. I found myself scrounging through the trash, looking for discarded fruit or bread. "What the hell you think you're doing?" I froze, my eyes wide with fear as a man advanced on me. "Why are you digging through the trash?" he asked, his brow wrinkled up. "What's the matter with you, girl?" My parents tossed me out," I explained falteringly. "I'd not eaten anything in 4 days. I'm sorry, I was only looking for a scrap of food." He looked momentarily disgusted, but then a gleam came into his eye. "I can offer you work," he told me. "It'll keep you fed, and even give you a roof over your head if you do well enough." The work he was offering, it turned out, was to be one of his girls, a prostitute. I didn't see as I had a choice. I was starving, and sleeping on the streets was dangerous. He took me into a dingy building and forced me to undress, so that he could see how much he could expect to earn from me. It was an utterly humiliating experience, being poked and prodded by a stranger. Still, he seemed satisfied by what he saw, and took me to another room with several other women in various states of undress. "I got a new one," he announced. "Get her dressed and tell her how we do things so she won't get picked up by the bobbies." I confess that the women did little to soothe my frayed nerves. They looked haggard and talked harshly. Clothes were shoved at me to wear. Then one of them took me under her wing for the night. "Always treat the men well, girl, for it's them who pay to keep you fed," she told me as we walked. "And whatever you do, don't talk back to Jim. Last girl who did, well, she didn't fare so well." The men, she went on to explain, would either find an abandoned building to use, or they would take me to a nearby inn if they were wealthy. I was to do whatever they asked of me, no matter how repulsive I might find it, or Jim would be unhappy. I didn't want to make Jim unhappy, and I was not to ever give anyone my real name. "You look like a Chloe," she stated. "If I were you, I'd use that name." My first customer was elated that he'd gotten a virgin. Much to my relief, he was also very kind, and he paid me well. "Sweetheart, you hide some of this money, you hear?" he said when we were leaving the inn. "Don't let anyone know you have it. I know you girls have it rough, and your pimps can be greedy bastards." He kissed me on the cheek. "I'll be looking for you, Chloe." "Please take me away with you," I wanted to beg, but I knew better. If he were able to help me, he would have, wouldn't he? Still, I heeded his words and hid the extra money he'd given me anyway. At the end of the night, when dawn was rising, we all went back to the dingy building to hand over our earnings to Jim. Out of the 100 I'd earned that night, he took 60 and made it seem like he was doing me a favor by letting me have 40. Sybil took me upstairs and showed me to a tiny room with a stained mattress on the floor. "You could sleep here. It's all you're going to find around here," she said. "At the end of the week, be prepared to pay, though." "How much?" I asked. 100 a week, Chloe," she replied. "You're going to have to hustle, girl." I was horrified. Not only was Jim taking a huge chunk of my earnings, but he was also charging £100 a week for a tiny room with a dirty mattress, and we had to share the bathroom. Remembering the extra the man had given me, I resolved to keep it hidden. In fact, I decided I was going to squirrel away a tiny bit from each night. Not so much to make Jim suspicious, but I had to do something. But where could I hide it that he would never think to look? Tim struck me as a man who would dig through a woman's monthly supplies with no qualm. My eyes fell on the metal grate in the wall then, and I decided that was as good a place as any. With one ear peeled for anyone heading my way, I used my tiny knife to carefully remove the screws. The interior was flat for quite a ways, so at least I didn't have to worry about the money falling. Putting it inside, I put the grate back and then headed for the dingy bathroom to wash up before trying to get some sleep. It didn't take me long to learn how to ensure the men paid me well. My livelihood was riding on it after all. The first client did come back to see me again the next week, assuring me he'd never choose another girl when I was around. He was a nice man, well educated, who seemed to just want my company more than anything. He would spend the time he paid for having me philosophical discussions for the majority. And at the end of it, I would fulfill his fantasy of the week. He always made sure I had extra, something I was very grateful for. I fell into an easy routine after a time, making myself presentable for clients and staying off Jim's radar. My secret hoard was growing behind the grate in the wall. I was able to pay the rent and keep food in my belly. One night, someone new approached me. A tall man, wearing a long black coat with a hood. Something about his appearance teased my mind, but I'd never seen him before. Had I? "Celine," he greeted me in a voice that sounded like the distant rumble of thunder. My heart stopped beating and I braced myself for a fight. "I'm sorry," he apologized. "I didn't mean to startle you." "How do you know me?" I asked, my heart still racing. "Walk with me, please," he said. I followed him down the sidewalk and onto an abandoned storefront, where he pushed back the hood of his cloak and exposed long, wavy red hair. I know you," I said, confused. "But how do I know you?" He offered a smile, his eyes flashing gold in the street lamps. "We met long ago, you and I," he explained, and pulled something out of his pocket. "I want you to have this, Celine." It was a pendant on a leather thong, something whitish that I couldn't identify. He slipped it around my neck while I stood there in shock and gently tucked the pendant out of sight. "Keep that on you, please," he told me. "It will keep you safe." "How?" I asked, not sure I believed him. "Just trust me, Celine, please," he replied, and then produced a small envelope from another pocket. "Half of this is for you. The rest you can let Jim know about." "I don't understand," I said, looking up at him. "Can't you just take me away from this, please?" My words drew a pained look from him. "If I had the ability to take you home with me, I would," he murmured. "I'll be back to check on you in a day or so, though. My word, Celine." It wasn't until I was headed back to my tiny room that I realized how much he'd given me. £1,000 in neat notes. Who the hell was he? I quickly stowed half of it in a place Jim wouldn't suspect, then entered the building. "Well, well," Jim said, taking the money I handed him and counting it. "Got yourself a rich one, eh? I may have to raise your rent, Chloe. You bringing in money like this every night." I didn't say anything, knowing better. I'd already seen that Jim liked to throw his weight around, along with his fists. He'd sent poor Meredith to the hospital 2 nights ago for not bringing in enough money. My tall, red-haired benefactor visited me twice more in the following week, each time leaving me with the same amount of money and making sure I hid half of it for myself. I asked his name, but he just smiled and told me he'd tell me another time. On Saturday morning I was entering the building. Jim met me at the door. "Well, if it ain't Miss Chloe," he sneered, and grabbed me by my arm to drag me up the stairs to my tiny room. The moment we were inside it, I saw that the grate had been removed, and all the money I'd been storing was spread across the mattress. "You want to explain this, bitch?" Fear had frozen my voice, though. All I could do was stand there staring in terror at him. "I took you in, gave you a good job and a nice place to live, and this is how you repay me?" he roared. "By stealing from me!" The first punch knocked me against the wall, and I slid down it limply. I was no match for his strength, and I had no way past him to run. Blow after blow rained down on my head, my torso, anywhere he could land a punch. Dimly I was aware of shouting, but I didn't know who was doing it, as I curled into a ball to try to shield myself. The pennant I'd been given fell out, and instinctively I wrapped my hand around it. "Oh God, if only you could save me," I reflected, choking back the cries of pain. An ominous growl reverberated through the tiny room. "Strike her one more time, and it will be the last." He was here. Elated, I tried to sit up, but Jim took the opportunity to land one more punch, breaking my nose and knocking me back to the floor. The redhead moved as fast as a striking snake, darting in to snatch Jim off the floor by his throat. Those gold eyes had flames burning in them, and his face was a study of unbridled rage. "I warned you," he hissed, then transformed himself into a rotting corpse. Jim began emitting a garbled scream. His eyes bugged out and rot began to spread onto him. His face turned bluish, then began to bloat and turn black before sloughing off, silencing him forever. The rot sped quickly after that, turning his entire body to little more than a decomposed skeleton, that the redhead let fall to the floor before transforming back. "Celine," he murmured. There was something in his voice. I couldn't quite identify it. He knelt on the floor beside me, gingerly drawing me up against him. Warmth like sunshine flooded me. I could smell something spicy, maybe cinnamon or cloves. Resting against him, something inside me stirred. What? I knew him, yet I didn't. When he released me, I no longer hurt anywhere. Gingerly, I felt my nose and found it whole and unbroken. "What are you?" I asked, unable to help it. "An old friend, Celine," he replied, and pulled something from his pocket to hand me. "Take this and take care of yourself. Get the other girls off the street too while you're at it." It was an envelope full of pound notes, more money than I'd ever seen in my life. When I looked up at him, in question again, he sighed and tucked a lock of hair behind his ear. "I needed time to assure I was giving you enough to keep you safe, Celine," he explained. "I'm sorry it took so long. I had hoped to have you away from here before it came to this." "You saved me, and that's all that matters," I told him. "Will I see you again?" He sighed again, deep in thought. "Perhaps." His answer evoked a sense of loss. "Please," I tried. I'd like to know you." "I understand, and I will try, but I make you no promises," he murmured. "Will you tell me your name now?" I asked. He laughed softly. "I owe you that much, don't I?" he teased. "Bellarine, Celine. My name is Bellarine." So quoth this raven. Oh, my darlings, now we can see where Chloe is connected to Celine. And there is at least one more story to go. And for next week, if you liked it, let Josphine know. She's just wonderful. And give me a like. If you comment, I will do my very best to comment back. I love to hear from you all. If you haven't subscribed, please do so and ring the little bell so you know when to come up and see me. And if you'll do me a favor of sharing so I can get the word out about my narrations. If you want merch, there's a link for that. If you want it at a cheaper price, let me know. I will try and get what style you want, and I'll see what I can do about getting a sale on. And I will see you guys next time. Farewell, my darlings.